Lord, we are few in number, Lord, but we pray that those who are on their way hasten their steps so that they can reach fast. And help us have a wonderful program, we ask. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. You may be seated. Our first song is going to be number 9 in the Advent Youth Sing. Number 9, Blessed Assurance, Jesus is Mine. Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine, of salvation, purchased of God, born of the Spirit, lost in His love. We're now going to go to number 199 in the same hymnal, the Advent Youth Hymnal, and we are going to sing, We Are Marching to Zion. Come we that love the Lord, and let our joys be known. Join in a song with sweet accord, and thus surround the throne. We that love the Lord, and let our joys be known. Join in a song with sweet accord. sing some courses, some familiar ones. We're going to start with I Am Under the Rock, and you guys just got to follow my lead, all right? Is that okay? Is that okay? All right. Bosom of Abraham, oh, rock my soul. It is so high, can't get over it, so low. Can't get under it, so wide. Can't get around it, oh, my soul. I am delivered, praise the Lord. I am delivered, glory to His name. I was lost in the valley of death. I am delivered, praise the Lord. I am delivered, praise the Lord. I am delivered, glory to His name. I was lost in sin in the valley of death. I am delivered, praise the Lord. Somebody pray for me. They had me on their minds. They sacrificed their time. They bowed down on their knees and prayed for me. Doubt that God will bring me out, that He will change my life and set me free. Oh, I'm so glad that someone prayed for me. Everywhere He went, He was doing good. He was a mighty healer. He cleansed the leper. When the people saw Him, they started walking. Everywhere He went, my Lord, He was doing good. One more time, everywhere He went, He was doing good. He was a mighty healer. He cleansed the leper. When the people saw Him, they started walking. Everywhere He went, my Lord, He was doing good. Mine, 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 Jesus is mine. Mine when I'm weary, mine when I'm dreary. Mine, 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 Jesus is mine. Jesus the Lord is mine. Yours, 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 Jesus is yours. Yours when you're weary, yours when you're dreary. Yours, 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 Jesus is yours. Jesus the Lord is yours. What you think about Jesus? He's alright. What you think about Jesus? Dynamite. Oh, what you think about Jesus? He's alright. What you think about Jesus? He is dynamite. Don't try to tell me my God is dead. He woke me up this morning. Don't try to tell me He's not alive. I spoke to Him today. He opened up my blinded eyes and set my spirit free. And all I want to talk about is a man from Galilee. So, what you think about Jesus? He's alright. What you think about Jesus? Dynamite. What you think about Jesus? He's alright. What you think about Jesus? He is dynamite. Jesus' name so sweet. Emmanuel name so sweet. Jesus' name so sweet. Emmanuel name so sweet. Every rock me rock upon Jesus. Jesus' name so sweet. Every rock me rock upon Jesus. Jesus' name so sweet. Jesus' name so sweet. Emmanuel name so sweet. Jesus' name so sweet. Emmanuel name so sweet. Every rock me rock upon Jesus, Jesus' name so sweet. Every rock me rock upon Jesus, Jesus' name so sweet. Amen. 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 Amen.
Hey, Nakaya was the same girl. And remember, we had AY last week. Remember what happened in AY last week?
What happened in AY last week?
Or you remember what happened in AY last week?
What we talk about? We talk about the Blitz?
You sure?
Choices. And what was the choices?
Relationships, right.
Okay.
So last Sabbath was at least memorable.
Yeah,
so
it
the
was.
Sabbath was about, before that, was about substance abuse. And that led into the Sabbath after that. And they had to have a part 2. We were specially requested for a part 2 on substance abuse. So today we are going to talk about substance abuse and continue the saga of Debo and drugs.
So this topic also goes into the choices because we have a choice whether to be a part of to contribute to helping others with their drug or substance abuse. So today we have part 2 to the, first part. So let us get into it. I hope everybody enjoys and welcome to this evening's EY.
Welcome.
All right, so we want to thank them for welcoming us. Again, happy Sabbath AY. Wow. Whatever it is I did, I'm just asking for forgiveness. So let's try that again. Happy Sabbath AY. All right, we could do a lot better, and we did a lot better there. So our scripture reading is taken from Ephesians 5:29 to 30. Ephesians 5:29 to 30, and I will read it in your hearing. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ also does to the church, because we are members of his body. Amen.
Right, good afternoon, everyone. Boy, I think people are still very sleepy. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Okay, let's make it sound as though the auditorium is very full. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. That's what I'm talking about. So it is really an excellent privilege to have you all here this afternoon. And as we know, this is a very needed conversation. And we do not have much time for any small talk, so I will not engage in any small talk. We want to get into the main meat of why we are here. I know there are people on their way. We did finish a bit late, but we can't wait. Unfortunately, this afternoon, we can't wait for those who are coming late. We have a very, very special guest with us this afternoon. And even before he comes, I just want to tell him, how much we do appreciate his efforts and the juggling and gymnastics he has had to do with his schedule to be here with us this afternoon. We have no other than Mr. Garth Sinclair. Mr. Garth Sinclair, okay, let me pause for the big applause that you all are going to give him. Mr. Garth Sinclair is a very prominent figure, if I dare say, in Trinidad and Tobago. Most of us, well, not me so much, but most people who listen to radio a lot, they know of Mr. Sinclair from the I-95 station. He has been host of the program Eye on Dependency for a number of years. I'm not an avid radio listener, but my family is, and because of that, because I can't always turn off my ear, I have also been listening. But there are a couple features that I do find very, very interesting, and one of them is Mr. Sinclair's feature, and that is the Eye on Dependency. And partially because I love working with young people, I like keeping it real, and his program always keeps it very, very real. So I will not say any more. Mr. Sinclair will tell you more of himself as he presents, I anticipate, but I know he's very excited to talk with you. So at this time, I want to invite Mr. Garth Sinclair to the podium. And again, I ask that you, those of you online, welcome as well. I ask that you give him your undivided attention. Listen carefully. He is a man with a wealth of experience and can do a lot to help us and our young people. So, Mr. Sinclair. Okay, and we do have a similar challenge as we had this morning with regards to the screen still isn't working, so we're going to ask persons to turn around so that you all will be able to see the graphics. Turn the, I guess. So you'll present from there?
Oh, you got the camera here. Let him move the camera. Tell him pause for a while.
is we don't know what life has in store for us. And I'm just sorry that we didn't have more of the youngsters here, because I know that all of us didn't grow up in that perfect home. I didn't grow up in a perfect one, so that it was dysfunctional even though my mother and my father lived together. However, there's a question I always ask young people during their time at home when I get a chance to speak to different audiences. How many of them at the age of 18 sat by themselves or with their siblings and planning to, they can't wait to get a job so that they can leave home? And a lot of hands go up in the air. Yeah, I know, because anytime that is the case, it's because something is not right at home. And because it's not right, some of us tend to leave home very early and not prepared for what is out there. So then there's low self-esteem we leave with, poor coping skills, and especially at this level here of university is a sort of crossroads for some. Some find it difficult to make it, some find it difficult to fit in, some want to fit in but they can't find the right groove, sometimes they end up in the wrong place. The pressures from home or studying, all of that combined can lead to people making the wrong choices. My problem was I came from a dysfunctional home. I had low self-esteem. And when I left home, it's because I was not enjoying home. My mother and my father was fighting constantly, and they didn't understand. Sometimes parents tend to think that when they fight, it don't affect children. It affects the children. It's just that we can't say anything, or the child can't say anything. And imagine you telling your father, "Daddy, hush now, you're quarreling too hard." And I wouldn't be standing in front of you here today if I tell my father that. I'm sure about that. So we just had to take it. And as a result of that, when I left home, it's because it was a sad moment, but it was a happy moment for me, because now I was away from all that fighting and bickering. And then, as the black sheep in the family, I consider myself, I went to the regiment with baggage and I didn't even know. And then there's a thing called predisposition and all of these things. So we'll go through all of that. And I hope at the end of this you will understand that making the wrong choice, and I mean the wrong choice, we tend to mix up mistakes and choices. But they're totally different things. So mistake, you have a color code that you use during the week, and one morning you get up late and you put on blue. When you come outside, everybody in red. And I mean, that's a mistake. You didn't plan to do that. But when you are offered drugs to use or alcohol to consume, not knowing yourself and not knowing, that's a choice. Unless somebody puts a gun to your head and says, "Take this or you die," which wouldn't be your choice, but you had to take it because you don't want to die. Other than that, you do it of your own free will, that's a choice. Unfortunately for us, now, pre-internet, our parents didn't have to worry about much. But now, with the advent of the internet and children being exposed to so many different things, they have lots of choices to make. And we found ourselves, the program my wife and I do, people reach out to us for help, and we realized that there are a lot of young people now ending up in St. Anne's mental institution from the first pull of marijuana. And they're not from homes that parents don't care. They have mothers and fathers living there trying to raise their children the best they could. But then some of them are predisposed and they don't even know. So I'll try to explain to you what predisposition means, because a lot of people are walking around not understanding that they are predisposed to substance abuse or alcoholism and don't even know it. But when they open that door and it's in their DNA, problems start. So I went from, my career started off really well. As a young soldier, I started off, I was a squad leader. Then that's me at my passing out parade, that's my mom, and everything was going really well. You know, I became, this is my first Independence Parade, and you can see how happy I was, because now I was, you know, I was smiling like I saw cake. It's just, I was that happy. Happy to know, because you see, I grew up hearing too that, you know, you're stupid just like your father. You're worthless just like your father. And now I know that was misdirected anger. But parents say this because they can't really tell the person who they want to tell or give a good piece of their mind. So the child who either resemble him or closest to him, or they will, you know, misdirect the anger on the child or children. And parents tend to think, at least back in the day, that you could beat discipline into a child. Now, long-time parents, and mommy excuse me, but long-time parents was really brutal. Oh God, they could have beat. You name it. I mean, my mother killed me already and brought me back to life. I am sure of that. Because God is great all the time. But we have come to discover, and I have realized so after doing all these studies, that the more you beat a child, is the more that child stores hate and resentment and anger. A lot of children you see now fighting on social media is because it's a lot of anger and hate and all of that boiling up, and when they come out, they can't hit their parents, they can't beat their parents, so they have to beat somebody. So, as much as we felt that beating a child is the way to go, you know, some people say, oh, the last Prime Minister took corporal punishment out of schools, and that is why children behaving like that, and all. I don't think so. The thing is, science now has proven, and it reached so far that now doctors don't even slap babies anymore when they birth them. Because what is discovered, that they're teaching child anger from that very early age. It's true, you know, you slap them twack and they cry and they say, yes, they're alive. And okay, but that's the first taste of anger. Because you hurt them. And hurting people hurt people. So when I left home, it was just like a child leaving home to join a gang. Because the more you tell a child you're stupid, and the first time somebody tell them, hey, you real good, they're going to listen to that person. You're going to lose that child. So it went from that to so this was my first Independence Parade. Okay, this is not working anymore. Where is that? Right, that's me as a regimental police, because now I met in the regiment my father and grandfather. My father didn't have time to realize how talented I was. And my mother wanted me to become a doctor or a lawyer. Something about parents back in the day, they always had this obsession with doctors and lawyers and these kind of things. And not understanding I could have been a carpenter, she didn't care. And, you know, as I always say, I wish my mother had beat me to play basketball or play an instrument, because now we see today how many millionaires came out of music and sports. Didn't have that then. So it was always about this book and being academic. So when I went in the regiment, my father and grandfather, who was my platoon sergeant and section commander, they saw something else in me. They saw talent. They saw potential. So my rise in the regiment was quick. You know, because from the regimental police staff, I became a physical training instructor. And that's me there the night of graduation, among other instructors. And everything was going right. Everything was going well. And just like you, I had an opportunity to be what I wanted to be, because the regiment was a place for that. So then, this is me as a physical training instructor. Now, while as a physical training instructor, I was approached to apply for commission, because it felt that I had enough talent now to become a commissioned officer. But I needed 5 subjects. I didn't have 5 subjects. So I had to go back to school now, as an adult, now to get the 5 subjects. The opportunity I had when I was in school, I couldn't do it because living in a home with mother and father fighting all the time, it's really hard to study. It's really hard to retain. It's really hard. I woke up one morning, resting to go to school, and I saw just in time to see my father hit my mother right hand and throw her down. Flushed to her face. And I tried to go back to sleep with that in mind. Try doing that and going up and going to school to study and try to retain while you're going to school. It don't work like that. Don't you also miss anything? Right? Cool? Or you are. So it was really difficult to maintain that composure in school and retain. So now I had to go back to school to get 5 subjects. It was hard, really, because I was a physical training instructor. I was really fit, so I was catching most of the duties with the youth camp and where I was working on the base and all of that. And so, but I would try to study. 2 in the morning I would wake up, try to study. And then one morning, the senior soldier found me sleeping on my books, and he woke me up and he said, you're sleeping on yourself. I said, yeah, it's problems. And he said, okay, I'm going to check you the next day, and I'm going to fix you with something that could help you stay up in the night. Okay, fine. I said, right. And I felt so good that a senior soldier was paying attention to me, and, that's part of my low self-esteem kicked in there. But he did show up the next day, and he brought this. God is great. Stay with me, people. Stay with me. God is great. All the time. Yeah. So he bought this. So I now was faced with a choice. Choice. And as I said, it's so ironic, I heard one of your speakers spoke about choice. We only have one chance to make the wrong choice. Some of us make that wrong choice and never recover from it. There are hundreds of young men and women sitting in our prisons right now for making the wrong choices. It's a miracle that I'm standing before you here today. I'm serious. Because now, when he showed me this, I had a choice. Because he came back to the camp and he sat with me actually, and I said, this will keep me up in the night? He said, yes. Now, this university might be different, but all the universities on the planet are faced with this situation. There are drugs selling in our universities. I'm not making this up. There are people who walk, because some youngsters tend to think that it's a study aid and it will help you and get encouraged to consume drugs to help you study because the pressure. And the easiest thing for somebody to say, don't take it all now, take a pull. Or take a drink now and cool your head. But you see, that taking a drink and cool your head and take a pull and cool your head could lead to, so you start a domino effect that you don't understand, that you would not be able to stop. So this is crack cocaine. This is cocaine powder, the more expensive one. And these are some of the instruments that people use. So then he told me, okay, I said, well, because as an instructor, I didn't want to be walking around with this ugly thing in my pocket and all of these things. So then he told me, okay, you can make a black cigarette. So a black cigarette is a combination of crack cocaine and marijuana mix. And he lit it. He prepared everything, heated. You know, when he started heating it, it started to turn black on the outside. And from the first pull I took, I was gone. I walked right into a trap. Didn't know who I was and what this drug would do to me. This, in Narcotics Anonymous, is called drug of choice. That drug of choice is the one that makes you feel that everything is going to be all right. Because some people could try alcohol, it do nothing for them. Some people try marijuana, it do nothing for them. Or vice versa. But once you take that drug on the right day, on the right time, and it makes you feel all right, that's your drug of choice, and you'll want to do it again. And you get hooked on it. And then you become dependent on it, and then addicted to it. What he didn't tell me is that this was one of the most addictive substances known to man. This, I would never have enough money to satisfy my habit. Never told me that. And I immediately said, okay, this is the best tasting thing I've ever tasted in my life. I mean, this was marvelous. I was floating, I was on cloud 9. But he never told me that I would sell my soul if I have to continue to use it. And I'm sure some, if not all of you here, may know somebody who is addicted to a substance, especially crack cocaine. And you see them from the beginning, and then you see them deteriorate, and you ask them, why can't you just stop? Why? Look what you're doing to yourself. You're destroying yourself. They can't. It takes a Herculean task to walk away from any type of addiction. Once you open that door and you let that devil in. So let me describe for you. You use substance and it's your drug of choice. It's like swallowing someone, and that someone will tell you what to do from there on. And you can't say no. So I went from a very talented young soldier to now borrowing money from my colleagues, stealing money from them, without remorse. When crack cocaine hit the defense force, nobody was prepared for it. Our seniors, no one knew what hit them. All they knew is that things started disappearing. And it's all reason because this drug is now on the scene. So before we move on, let me get you to understand what Class A drugs will do. And Class A, and you will go through more of that before we wrap up. But Class A drugs are stimulants. Now, cocaine is a stimulant. They are stimulants and depressants. Marijuana, alcohol, they are depressants. cocaine, LSD, ecstasy, all of these are methamphetamine. These are stimulants. Cocaine, marijuana, alcohol, they are depressants. What he didn't say is that this drug is a feeling and not a high. So, which means then that the only time it felt good doing it is actually doing it. And after it's done, there's a crash and I have to start all over again. So a crack addict needs crack every 10 minutes. Now understand how expensive that is. Now let me explain to you why the addict cannot stop and he has to try very hard to. We all in this room here, we were born with a chemical called dopamine. Dopamine is that chemical that's associated with pleasure. Which means that anything you're doing that's pleasurable, like eating, and especially eating, you know, unless you're addicted to food, you know, it's when you're eating that food and you're swallowing and it tastes good, you know. Some of us leave the meat for last and all this kind of thing, and we separate if we have callaloo and pie and all these things, and you know somebody addicted to food, they're eating the food and watching your plate and saying, "You eating that?" And they take it and put it in their plate, you know. And, you know, oh, he like that? Okay. But yeah, that's how it is, right? But here's what happens. Here's what's supposed to happen. When you finish eat, there's a signal that's supposed to be sent to the brain that says, okay, you're full, lock off the dopamine, that's it. You get up, you wash your wares, you go back to school, you go back to work, do what you have to do, right? That's how it was supposed to work. But when you are addicted to a substance and you start smoking, you start drinking, here's what happens. Now, picture this is a cup, this is a tap. You turn on the tap and the cup fills. Once the cup is full, you turn off the tap. That's how dopamine works, right? What drugs do is knock the head of the tap off. So the dopamine continues to flow, making you think that, hey, I'm not good yet. I'm not filled yet. So it makes you crave for more. And then what happens after that, the body now, realizing that something is wrong, goes into emergency mode and start turning down the dopamine. But I still smoking, I still drinking, and I'm not getting anything because the dopamine is turning down. So what happens, when 1 beer or 2 beer would have been enough, now I need 5. I need a whole bottle of alcohol to drink now to just get that little buzz. That is what gets the addict out of control. As I said, it's like walking into a trap. So I went from being one of the brightest minds, one of the best physical instructors in the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment. And I'm not saying this widely. You could ask anyone, Guard Sinclair from 1982 to 89, what was he like as an instructor, they will tell you. But our seniors and our superior officers, they weren't ready. They didn't understand. Their only answer was to get rid of them when they shouldn't have. We got no help. So they got rid of us. And during that era, a lot of sailors and soldiers, there was a mass exodus leaving the regiment and Coast Guard with no future ahead. I was eventually discharged because I misused military property. They gave me a lacquer, necker, sander, and saw to carry back in camp one time, and I carried by the rescue. Upon it, they found out I was discharged for misuse of military property. Now I had to go back to my mother's home. I stole everything from my mother. Everything that moved. My mother cried daily. She couldn't believe it that her eldest son ended up like this. She too didn't know what to do. Tried rehab, that didn't work. I stole so much from that lady that one day she went to put up some drapes she thought she had in her cupboard and didn't see the drapes. And she went on the back step, put her hands to the heaven and said, Lord, Father, kill my son for me, please. Now, can you imagine you hearing your mother asking Lord to kill you, please? And I'm saying, I know God like old people. And maybe she might find God taking too long and try to do it herself. So I left home, went back to Port of Spain, joined a gym, and started stealing from the gyms because I was an aerobic instructor. So I did aerobics around the country, and I started stealing from them. And then this gentleman, poor soul, heard me singing in the gym and asked me to join a band. We know what a band room have in it. $76,000 later, I was arrested and charged for larceny. And I did 6 months in prison. That was my wake-up call. It had to take that to wake me up. God is great all the time. But it took that to wake me up because prison was the wake-up call for me. That's not how I grew up. My mother, God bless her soul, she taught us the right things. You know, prayer was one thing that I know kept me because she taught us how to do that. I saw myself doing what I was doing, but I couldn't stop. Couldn't. And a lot of young men and women who are in prison right now will tell you that they've done things that they know. I mean, imagine singing with a band and stealing the equipment that we used to sing with. And nothing that they would find out. Eventually they did. And I was arrested and charged. We didn't grow up like that. As dysfunctional as we were, as dysfunctional as my father was, my mother was the kind of mother you came over with a pen she didn't recognize, you were to be held by your hair and carry that pen back where you got it. That's how I grew up. So my mother never encouraged us in that. But to leave from that and turn to stealing and lying and going the distance just to get a few seconds of pleasure. I wasn't proud of it. And it really hurt that as the only member of my family that went to the military, I had to leave in that way. But I ended up in prison. And when I was released from prison, June the 11th, 1991, I decided that enough was enough. All I knew is while I was in there, I used the time, I spoke to God so many times, I quarreled with him and all. I just wanted to be a soldier to finish my career. And it didn't happen. God alone knows why. But what I do know is that I decided that I'm not going to let that destroy me. I knew myself, I knew the talent that I had, I knew what I was capable of, and I knew I had to be here for some reason. So I made a conscious decision that any youngster that I can speak with, I will try my best to let them know the dangers of this. And any substance that anybody will force you to consume, or you're lineman, you know, you're hanging out with your crew and you must drink this, you must do anything. And if it doesn't feel right, it's not right. Because all the people that I hung with, smoked with, I went to prison by myself. Nobody didn't come with me. I was there alone. Had to try and blend in and live there in one piece. Prison is not for the faint of heart. But God kept me there, and I left without a scratch, thank God. And now I've embarked on a mission. For the past 20 years, I have this radio program that now I'm sharing this information, like the program coming tomorrow, God's willing. We have 2 experts in studio with us because we want to discuss cannabis. And why is it that so many youngsters ending up in St. Anne's from suffering psychosis. You all would not believe the list, how long it is. Why? Because a lot of them didn't know that they were predisposed. So let's listen to this. You may have to adjust the volume a bit. It's supposed to be. What it says here, okay, if in case it doesn't, it's considered a brain disease because drugs change the brain and its structure and how it works. So these brain changes can be long-lasting and can lead to harmful behavior seen in people who abuse drugs. Let's try the next. Could you get the slide to move again? Because it's kicking now. All right. I don't know that. Your volume up? No, what's supposed to happen here, folks, is that it's supposed to be playing something here for you to hear, but I don't know why it's not happening. But it's to further explains the way it works. Let's see if we can fix that. Okay, let me see this.
We know that despite the many differences, virtually all of the drugs of abuse have one thing in common as far as the neurobiology goes. Every one of them activates a dopamine system. Okay, so that's a critical neurotransmitter in the brain, and it's associated with some very vital functions. And it turns out that two of those functions, one happens to be pleasure and reward systems. So when you feel the many differences, virtually all of the drugs of abuse have one thing in common as far as the neurobiology goes. Every one of them activates a dopamine system. Okay, so that's a critical neurotransmitter in the brain, and it's associated with some very vital functions. And it turns out that two of those functions, one happens to be pleasure and reward systems. So when you feel good about who you are or something that you've done, or you just wake up in the morning and life seems terrific, that means dopamine is squirting out in an area of the brain we call the nucleus accumbens. If I were to wipe that dopamine pathway out of your brain, you never would feel good. Life would be rotten and you'd probably commit suicide. So this pleasure or reward pathway is very critical to enjoying life, and it turns out that every drug of abuse turns that pathway on.
So, you know, when something good happens, we achieve something, some people, hey, let's take a drink, let's celebrate, you know. And as well, when things go bad, some people binge eat, some people drink. So it could be from one extreme to the next. It's not something that you can control, but if you're aware of it, you will be able to manage it. But let's listen to this right now. Before we go back to the other audio, this year is very important, and a lot of us, even back in the day or even now, didn't understand what predisposition is all about. How many of you here in this room know if your grandfather or grandmother or great-grandmother or grandfather or even mother or father had mental issues? Because it's something that we don't discuss. That's taboo. So you didn't want people to know, well, don't tell nobody your father was in St. Anne's, because they're going to think you mad too. You know, that's how we look. Well, hello. You know what? We have to have the discussion now. Because you don't know if you're walking around with genes that have you predisposed. If the alcoholism, mental ill health, like the young man and the mother we're going to speak with tomorrow morning, they have mental ill health in their family. Now, here's what the trick. This is a family here, right? So the father is a carrier, a mother is a carrier. And we have the unaffected child, we have the carrier, they carry the gene, and this child will be affected. So which means if this child tries marijuana, cocaine, alcohol for the first time, that's it, they're gone. Because their grandfather or grandmother or mother, you know, but everybody else have the gene, but they're not affected. But your child can be. Which one of your child you know is affected by what? So if your grandfather was an alcoholic, let your children know that. And let them know that they're not ordinary like everybody else, that they just can't go out there and drink and have a good time. Because I know real good families, decent families, they have one child in St. Anne's right now and all the others doing well. Why is that? Because that child was the affected child. This is something that we don't discuss even in schools. But now we must be honest with ourselves and understand that predisposition is a thing. An example of it is being likely to have an illness that your mother and father both had. The state of being predisposed or susceptible to something, especially to a disease or other health problems. You need to understand that and have that chat with your family. Be honest with them so that they wouldn't go out there and they know that they're different to everybody else and they wouldn't go out and use substances, especially when they have poor coping skills. Because even that can be passed on.
This is a very complex genetic issue, and it's not like there is an addiction gene and a story. It's probably like there's 50 or 100 genes that can give you vulnerability under a variety of different settings or issues. So as you think about it, some of the things that have been looked at genetically, there may be a genetic vulnerability to starting drug use. There may be genetics for how much does it activate your reward system when you take it. So it's the difference between, well, I use cocaine and, yeah, well, it kept me up, but other than that, it was a real drag, to, wow, that was great. That's probably genetics. Continuing drug use. Why would you continue to use it even though you appreciate it could have some serious negative consequences? That's probably, some of that's coming from genetics. The addiction process itself, this may have to do with frontal cortex and decision making. Some people are very good at decision making. Even when they were teenagers, they seem to make the right decisions. I've seen 2 or 3 of those people. They're in the Smithsonian now, but I've seen them. So, becoming addicted, the difference between what the prefrontal cortex is doing or can doing, may be a genetic thing.
You all following so far, right? So, like I said, some people try alcohol, make them feel crappy, and they just never want it again. And there are those who will drink whole night. They vomit. You have to lift them up and carry them home. They will pray and ask God, please let me live through the night. I will never drink again. Oh God, Father, please don't kill me. And they will beg God, please. And from the time they wake up and sober up, the next day they go on to look for a drink. It's called predisposition.
But I think it's important to understand that because you're vulnerable doesn't mean it's inevitable. Because you are prone to addiction doesn't mean that you are going to become addicted during your life. It just says that you've got to be careful. And that if circumstances are right, the chances that you'll get into difficulty are greater than most people. So it's not inevitability, it's vulnerability, which means it's important for us to appreciate those. Then we can use them to our advantage instead of those things working against us.
Find out, folks. God is great all the time. Find out. You need to do research on yourself, because you at some point will have children and you'll want to know what lies, the secret is in the blood. You see, fortunately for you now, we have this kind of research to understand why people end up on the streets. And Trinidad and Tobago not prepared for the homeless situation. You all know that by now. Because there's this same parent, St. Anne's not keeping them, St. Anne's not fixing the problem. St. Anne's is not to fix the problem. St. Anne's is to keep the problem at bay. But then they don't keep them. The family don't want them back home. So St. Anne's not keeping them. The family don't want them back home. Where are they going to end up? On the streets. That's why we have most of these, apart from those who want to be there, some people you see end up on the streets is because they didn't have anywhere else to go. Family don't want them, mental institution can't keep them. So they're caught in between of fending for themselves. Now you have the opportunity now to make the right decision. And do your research before you let anybody say, hey, try this, it's going to make you feel better. Because it could make you feel worse and end up being in trouble. So there are risk factors, and I want to say to you sitting in this room here, you youngsters, if you haven't tried drugs, thank God. Congratulations. You're not missing anything. I guarantee you that. Because now, I get party whole night on a bottle of water. And I mean, I don't even go party, so it's not necessary. But nobody cannot influence me to do that anymore. Because I know me. And I know I will go off the deep end once I wake up that giant. For the 33 years of this giant sleeping inside of me. This is why we are referred to as recovering addicts. Because if I wake up this giant that has been sleeping in me for the last 33 years, I have to feed him for the last 33 years that he was sleeping. And that's it, I'm gone. There's no coming back from that one. I know people who had 10 years clean time under the belt and take a chance and get back to their drug of choice and went right back and never recovered. So, but if you observe and remember, there are risk factors and protective factors for drug abuse and addiction. So, okay, the risk factors: aggressive behavior in childhood, lack of parental supervision, poor social skills, drug experimentation, availability of drugs, and community. Now, we have a lot of that going on in our country here. This is a recipe for what we're seeing right now on social media. There are children who living in homes where father will sit around the table with them and light a joint. Wrap a joint and light it right there while they're studying or eating. They're exposed to, once they walk outside, drug selling right on the street. And then, because of the pressures of life where they are accustomed, that's it. That's what they know. So they are stuck with that. And they have to try to navigate their way around or out of that. Now, this is good. There's a perfect child here. And from the studies now, knowing that, okay, a lot of children, and let's face it, a lot of pregnancies are not planned in Trinidad and Tobago. Even in the world. Right? You go out at night, you have a party, and have a fling, or you go home, boom, pregnant. That's how most children are born. Let's face it. The perfect pregnancy is, hey, we plan this, we clean our system, no drinking, no smoking, we get pregnant. While the child in the womb, you read into the child hearing, because it is discovered now whatever happens on the outside, that child hears every single thing. So if that child, a mother being pregnant in an environment where it have cussing and fighting every single day, and she and father and everybody cussing and fighting every single day, that child hearing that and coming on prepared to fight too. It's as simple as that, because that child inside they realize, wait boy, I had to prepare the box when I come out of here. Because from what I hear going on the outside there, I had to get ready. So they're coming out with a mindset already that, you know, the system and the world against them. But it's not impossible. You can have the perfect child, but you have to prepare for that. And it can't be, oops, you send a text, I'm pregnant. Don't work like that. There are signs. There are red flags, they call them. You know somebody like that. And sometimes it could be, you know, it will have to be drugs. But these are red flags. And we've interviewed a lot of people, especially in universities, like in London, who, because they wanted to fit in the money that their parents were sending for them, it wasn't enough. They wanted to impress friends. And as a result of that, ended up trafficking drugs and got caught. Some university for some is a challenge for them and their parents. So they take jobs on the side and end up selling themselves. And you wouldn't even know. They just disappear in the dark and come back when the sun is up. So there are a lot of red flags that you can, if you want, pay attention. But you see, we're so busy now in a fast-paced world, in a fast-paced university where everybody's looking out for themselves, we hardly notice until the person falls, then we notice something wrong. But we have to pay attention. No. This is just a touch of what we are exposed to right now. Apart from the cocaine, marijuana, and I keep saying that government went ahead and decriminalized marijuana without even educating the country on who and who should not use marijuana. Government, this gracious, wonderful government of ours said, go ahead and plant, each member of your family, you have 4 trees you could plant in your yard. When I heard that, I said, well, what madness I hear in here, Lord? These people really don't understand this thing. Because, so let's say I have a household with 4 children and 4 of them decide to plant 4 trees for themselves. You have marijuana cultivation in your backyard. What are we going to do with all this marijuana? And who should use marijuana, who shouldn't? But the government said, hey, we love you all, go ahead. You're allowed 30 grams and you can plant 4 trees. Who is monitoring that? Where are we getting the seeds for it? And how high should we grow these trees? And if that wasn't bad enough, during the pandemic, people had to find a way to make money. So you're watching in your backyard and you just lose your job, but you have marijuana trees growing in your backyard. Time to sell marijuana. Simple as that, because it's make a lot of money. So now adults giving their children marijuana to carry to school to sell. And then, look at this delicious looking brownie. That's a marijuana-induced brownie. Marijuana-infused brownie. God is great. All the time. That's a marijuana-infused brownie. There are a number of children already caught in our schools with this. They don't even know. And some of them greeted eating a whole brownie one time. I'm not understanding that you cannot just eat a whole brownie. They call them marijuana edibles. So you consume a marijuana edible, the whole thing, the head, or you don't get high until maybe an hour, 2 hours, it depends on your metabolic rate. And then after that, when that kick in, you're going to be high for like 24 hours. I wonder if any of you ever understand that kind of high. You ever sat next to your body yet? You get so high, you wake up and you're sitting down next to your body. That's how high it gets with that. And people don't understand. And youngsters don't understand. And when people give you it, they don't tell you that. So they tell you, try this, and you eat a whole brownie. In St. Joseph Convent in South, some young ladies went to school with the brownie and started selling them. First red flag, a brownie is $50 for one. Duh. $50 for a brownie? Okay. So they sat and they started eating, and they started getting kicks on the girl. Where is this? You say you're supposed to get really high, and they eat it and eat the whole thing and going back to class. Not understanding this going and bite them an hour later. An hour later, who start a cold sweat? Who start to see 2 blackboards? Who start to see 4 teachers? All one fall down, boom. And that was it. Hospital. The girls were arrested and charged. Now they have a conviction. So don't let nobody just offer you no brownie or no cookie or just like that without asking a question, because they would not care. They will be glad for you to eat it and just monitor and see what happened to you after that. And never even say it's them give it to you. This is what our children are up against. This is a vape pen. And vaping now, somehow they managed to convince the world that vaping is safer than normal cigarettes. It's worse. I've known people died from this. And you can actually change the cartridge and use THC oil. And if you see this in your child bag, you will think it's a highlighter or something. It don't look like a vaping instrument. And then we have, of course, from time immemorial, the alcohol. And then we have what we call the Zessa pills. Now these are actually the class A pills like ecstasy and LSD and all kind of thing. But when you take it, the way people behave, that's why we call it Zessa pills, because it's a stimulant. It is just as dangerous. And then it was discovered in our primary schools that we had this. Cough syrup and Sprite mix. It's called lean or purple drunk. Lil Wayne made that famous. And little children in primary schools, some of them got suspended from school for trying it. The scientists call this liquid heroin. Now, they go into a drugstore and buy a bottle of cough syrup that has DXM or codeine in it. That by itself, some people drink the cough syrup just like that. But they will go to school, somebody will walk with the Sprite and some sweets, and they mix them together and form a cocktail, just like rum and coke, but it will stop their heart, which it did. 1 or 2 of them. I had to run to a school to explain to them because they didn't know what hit them. But you see, these things in our country are kept secret. So we are not allowed to learn from other mistakes, other people's mistakes. We are not allowed to learn. They keep it quiet. So if it happened in a school in South, Port of Spain may never know, unless it's really drastic. No, it's time we share this information and put other people on their guard so that you wouldn't try it. So if you walk in, now if you search a child's bag and you see cough syrup, all they tell you, look, I have the cold. You can't doubt them, they have the cold. But it's what they're going to do with it. So folks, is that there's a lot that we need to educate ourselves on. Oh, this is me here, and the band I was telling you about, the equipment that I stole. Well, they went home with these guitars, so I couldn't take them and the saxophone, but $76,000 later, as I told you. That's the band Carlian I was singing with. This guy here is the ultimate in forgiveness, because he is the owner, or well, he was the owner of the band at the time, and he and I work out now together. Because when I came out of prison, I went straight to him and I made amends. I just couldn't believe that I did that to this band. And he forgave me. And Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, he would be in my yard, we sweating together, and we remained friends. And I thank God for that, you know, because it really hurt to know that I hurt them. God is great all the time. Now, you see this document here? It's called a presidential pardon, and it would, once you apply for a pardon, of course it would say, and that you would see, they talk about the equipment that are stolen and all of these things. But I applied for a pardon, and thankfully I got one. Without this, I cannot get a clean certificate of good character. So you have to let youngsters know, and I preach to youngsters, there is no rank in getting arrested. Because once you go to court and get a fine or a conviction, even if you get a fine, it will be on your record for life. So don't feel that you can drive under the influence and you get charged and you go to court and once you pay that fine, that goes against your name. There was a young man who called me to find out how to get a pardon because he was about this close to becoming a pilot with Caribbean Airlines. This close. And they wanted a police certificate of good character. He applied for one. But then only to realize that he had a DUI 5 years before. He got charged driving under the influence. No airline going to hire you with a DUI on your record. He had to fly. They blanked him. Lost the job of his dreams. One wrong choice. So this is a very important document to clear your record. If you don't have it, forget that. And this is why I preach to youngsters that even if you're going through a zone and you decide that, okay, I want to turn my life around, you have a conviction recorded against your name, it puts a ceiling over your head. A very low ceiling. God is great all the time. So now, I use my time and ask God to use me now to educate others. So this is what my wife and I do on a Sunday morning on I-95.5 FM. And as I said, it wasn't in the plans. Wasn't in my plans. But God said it, I have to do it. Folks, my mission here today was to convince you, to convince others to be careful of the choices that they make. I hope to God that I was able to accomplish that and give you food for thought. And remember, that one wrong choice could start a domino effect that you might not be able to stop. God is great all the time. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Mr. Garth Sinclair, we are so grateful. I think they want us to move back to the front. All right, then. We could relocate. All right. I think we're going to relocate ourselves. I'm sure you would agree with me that this was a very thought-provoking, inspiring, in-depth presentation on addiction and drug dependence and everything in between. We are very grateful for the presence of Mr. Garth Sinclair. And there's a lot that stood out to me, in this presentation. And I'm very thankful for the journey he took us on, which involved his own personal experience. We didn't just get theory, but we got theory. We didn't just get research, but we also got research. But wrapped up in his experience, and what is very inspiring is that he has a ministry to really help persons who are falling into that crack, or when I say crack, I mean into dependence. Lord have mercy. But not intended. And also to assist people, like young people, I'm sure that we know the habits and the actions of our close friends. And what has been presented to you today can be a lifeline that you could use to help persons in your circle of influence. And so we thank you, Mr. Garth Sinclair. And this is your opportunity to get involved, to ask questions, to make contributions. I know that you have questions and there are things that stuck with you, that stood out to you. While we have Mr. Sinclair here for the next 5 minutes, we want you to pose your questions to him, anything that you want to ask, and about what you've heard today. This is the opportunity. Okay, there's a question on the chat online, but I would like another mic, so if you could give our facilitator a mic as he comes forward to just field those questions. Can you read the question on the mic? Use a mic to read it. I'm not seeing it as yet.
It says...
You want to come up? It's too bright up there? Yeah, you come up. Yes.
What programs are available to help our young people who are dependent on drugs or substances?
Wow, good question. I was hoping nobody didn't ask me that question. Because to get into rehab, there are rehab facilities, but it's catered for adults. Unfortunately, there are no programs for children, however, and it depends on what age you're talking about too as well. But if it's rehabilitation program they're asking about, if let's say somebody get involved with drugs,
yes,
then unfortunately there is no rehab facility that will take a child under 15 or even 16. You have to be like 16 and up. So it's unfortunate, but that's the harsh reality. There are some private rehab centers that we can refer to, but they don't make themselves public. So, but you have my number, miss, so that if anybody knows someone, at a young age needs help, then we can refer them to the private institution. But there's none really for youngsters, unfortunately.
Yes. As you presented, it was very vivid graphic. It's important as a deterrent, but I was wondering, have you found that any presentation would make people more curious about drugs in that way? Has it been a deterrent, or has it been a protective factor against that?
Right. I also make it a point to let people know that I am not here because remember there's predisposition, there's peer pressure, there's low self-esteem. I'm not here, I always try to let people know I bring the real part of substance abuse. I cannot prevent you from trying drugs. I cannot stop you from using it. but I can tell you what will happen if you do. That's my mission, really, you know, because there are people who will still be curious. Listen, there was an exercise I remember done at, we went to one conference, right? So there was a piece of paper that was put on the wall and it marked, "Do not lift." And we spent 2 weeks at that conference. But it said in red, "Do not lift." And somebody was put to monitor us going in and out of the room all the time. You know, we go for lunch, we take a break, we come back. And there were 1 or 2 people who would still pass. And they caught about 5 people doing it. Those are the people. Even though you say, "This is fire, don't put your hands," somebody will still kind of stick it to see if it will burn. Understand, there are people like that. So I cannot stop people from using drugs, but all I can tell you is what my experience was and what happened to me, and it can happen to you if you try.
Very powerful answer. I have 2 questions online. I don't know if you have any in the house. We'll
Yes.
take priority for those in the house. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, there was a question asked about what programs there are. If you get involved in the criminal justice system as a result of drug, what the court has in Trinidad and Tobago is the drug treatment court. It is a voluntary court, and through that court system, you have to agree to go through rehabilitation. You have to agree to treat. Then you are supervised, and you come back and you're repeatedly reporting. So there is a system. Once you got caught and you are charged for rehabilitation of drug offenders. It's called the Drug Treatment Court, and it happens regularly.
Okay.
And it is an ongoing process.
Okay.
Also, some people, if they are convicted for drug offenses, and let's say they got a probation order, community services order, one of the requirements is you join one of these programs and you come back and report as to your progress and for support. So there are things in place to support that.
Yes, thank you very much for that
Right. So let me
information.
just add to that. Now, and she's perfectly correct. Now, the person was talking about in-house rehabilitation.
Yeah.
Now, there's a difference. The drug treatment course, now, drug treatment course came to Trinidad and Tobago because of our independency. So, we did our research. We approached the judiciary some years ago and let them know that this is an alternative to incarceration. And the judiciary accepted it, and now we have drug treatment courts here. The thing is, drug treatment courts are for those who will follow the tenets and the rules of the drug treatment courts, because there are people who would relapse. Now, there are those who really need in-house treatment, like institutional treatment, and that is, I think, is still a challenge for people of a certain age, but they try, yes, because there's a family court, remember that too as well, and they're doing a great job of that.
Yes.
You know, so I thank my thank for bringing that up, but I was talking about the rehab, the actual rehab facilities.
The institutions.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have...
Yes, this lady had a question.
Yeah, we have 2, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes,
I have a question. In Barbados, rehab is unfortunately, as far as I know, not free. I'm aware of a few people, I'm friends with them. They started using heavy substances when they were younger. And they are afraid to stop because they know what relapsing feels like, and they don't want to go through that. They also cannot afford rehab facilities. So what would your advice be for somebody in that situation?
Pressure.
So
go ahead.
They are so dependent that they don't want to let go of the drug. And their drug of choice is what? Alcohol, cocaine? Alcohol. Right. You know, what would you say to someone like that? You know, it's just as I said earlier, that you cannot help someone if they don't want to accept that they have a problem and they need help. That's one. You cannot force someone. This is why most rehab centers will tell you, if the person doesn't want to come, though they don't want to be cooperative, they have to force them to come, they're not going to take them. Because they're going to be disruptive and
They're going to run away.
all of that, they're going to give trouble.
Yeah.
So first of all, a successful rehabilitation journey is the person has to admit that they have a problem and they need help. And if they cannot admit they have a problem and they refuse that help, then there are some people you have to just let them experience their nuclear blast, what they call, my nuclear blast was going to prison. But you cannot, unless you apply forcible rehabilitation, you really cannot stop someone from using drugs and take that away from them if they don't want to surrender and admit, look, I have a problem, I'm powerless, and I need help. I know it because even in some families that they end up applying what they call tough love to a person because you have a son who using drugs, stealing everything from home and doing everything, and you're kind of enabling, but then there must be a point in time when you say enough is enough. And you apply that tough love and tell them, look, we can no longer sit by and watch you destroy yourself. And either you go to rehab, you have an intervention, either you go to rehab, or we cannot deal with this any longer. And you give them an ultimatum. So I'm sorry to hear about your friends, but there's nothing really you can do if they don't accept and want the help.
Thank you.
So I was curious about the pardoning system. When you were talking about the pardon, I had to make a exit, but you were talking about the pardoning system and someone came to you about getting pardoned. They were a flight person and
yeah, they had a job that day.
How does that pardoning system work and what's the requirements to get a pardon once you've gone into the jail system, prison system?
Okay, so that falls under the purview of the Ministry of National Security. The Protective Services Division, you go there, you pick up a form, and that form will guide you on the procedure to apply for a pardon. A pardon is granted by the Mercy Committee, which the President endorses. The thing is, you will have to get your court extract, the note of evidence of where the crime was committed, and then once you have that in your possession, you fill out the form, you have to get testimonials and referrals from folks, and then you submit that to National Security and wait.
Two of them. You spoke about prison being your nuclear blast, that thing that gave you that wake-up call.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, I mean, is there any other way that prison helped you? Is the prison system one that probably generally helps? Does it help people who go in with those challenges?
Yeah, well, yes, because a lot of things that I've been accustomed to, I couldn't get it in prison. You know, like once you enter prison, your life no longer belongs to you. You now have to eat, sleep, wake when they say.
Yes.
And you know, because I could remember going into Frederick Street the first time when they took us through a dungeon sort of looking place, and they gave us two of the hardest hops bread I ever ever ate in my life. And it was about 4 in the afternoon, and when I had those 2 hops bread with Kool-Aid, and I asked the officer, so when are we going to get things to eat again? Because we were in court whole day that day. And he said, well, not till tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock. And I said, you mean I had to spend from now till 4, from 4 till 6 the next morning without something to eat? And so I asked him, I said, so what's the time now? He asked me, you have to go out? I said, no, I don't have to go out. I just want to know how long I stay without food to eat. And then it dawned on me, folks, that, wow, freedom is such a precious thing. That was part of it. I realized that all my freedom was gone because now I have to wait till they say so. Imagine sitting in a cell. Imagine sitting in your room from now till tomorrow morning. You can't even go and buy a snack, not a pack of nuts. You can't do anything. Just stay there till the bell ring and you go outside and eat again. Do you think you could do that unless you're fasting? I can't. I go fast.
You'll go fast.
I'm serious. I mean, because And that is one of the things that woke me up. I realized, wow, freedom, this is the beginning of losing my freedom. And then there's no, and in some places there's still none, there's no toilet in there. It was a pigtail bucket I had to use with 8 more people around me.
Oh my Lord.
Come on.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be a wake-up call for anybody. But for some people, they need 3 and 4 trips before that wake them up. That one trip woke me up. I didn't want to go back after I saw that and experience that whole prison life, sleeping on the floor, on the cold concrete, with a little thin piece of carpet, you know, they just cut to your length and, yeah, that's your bed. I didn't want to go through that again.
And you know, the presentation was so, you know, eye-opening. And I'm wondering, as you said, there are people on university campus who are dependent on substances. There are people, young people who are being approached, and there are various levels of predispositions and the drugs of choice, all these things. What can we do if somebody has already engaged or is very tempted to engage? What steps can they take to really prevent themselves from going headlong into substance dependence? What would you say should be that action that they should take right now, being faced with such a challenge?
Once your life starts to become unmanageable from anything, it is time to ask for help. And do not challenge it. Do not feel you could handle it. Because when we served, and the sailors and soldiers who served with me, some of us, we were asked, you know, then they asked. But then some people are in denial still, right? They feel that they can handle it. First of all, I tell people, if you have to take a drink when you get up in the morning to go to work, or before you work, you have a problem. Simple as that. If you cannot go to a party or go to a function or socialize without having drink in that function, you have a problem. There are some people who can manage their intake of alcohol and know when to stop, but then these are responsible, and then some of us cannot do it. You have to know yourself. And once you, because for some people, sometimes they lime in and somebody hand them a joint and it has crack cocaine in it and they don't know. There are a number of people who got hooked like that. And once you know that happened, speak to someone. But do not ever try to hide a dependence or addiction. Anytime you try to hide it, it's going to control you, and it's going to be too late for you. And when I say too late, which means that you're in really deep, and it's going to take more work to get you out. So once you know that, and then too, if you, like you went out last night, and you wake up next morning, you feel in your body in pain, but you don't know what happened. You can't remember what happened the night before, and you mean you can't remember anything? Something went wrong. Somebody slipped something in your drink, and you can't remember, because there are date rape drugs like that as well that people can actually put in your drink, and you wouldn't know what happened the next day. So you can't report it, you can't do anything because you can't identify anybody or remember what happened. So there's that possibility as well.
And I guess my final question, I'm trying to summarize all what I see online as well. Prevention, staying away from it, as you said, is the best solution. I mean, prepare yourself, even upon introduction of that drug, that you have a position that you have taken. I mean, you said that in the presentation. Can you just elucidate on that aspect of it before we...
Prevention. Right. Well, as I said to you all here, you know, if you're not using drugs at all, you haven't tried it, I congratulate you. Pat yourself on the back and, you know, feel proud. Because remember, your brain fully develops at the age of 25. Anything below that, you're running the chance of damaging your brain. Remember, your brain develops from the age of 25, not before. So we have a lot of children right now who are already damaging their brains because they've been introduced to drugs or alcohol. So understand that. Educate yourself. Educate yourself. Remember, prevention is better than a pound of cure, an ounce of prevention. So instead of wanting to fit in and not knowing yourself, you don't know if you have mental ill health in your family, find that out. Find out about everything about your family, because now that will help you to understand who you are and what you can use and what you cannot. Do not let your low self-esteem or peer pressure make you give in and say, all right, I'm going to take one drink, and you know what, you don't have to. Be proud of yourself, be strong, and learn when to say no and make the right choice. Because remember, once you make the wrong choice and you open that door, it will be hard for you to turn back that decision. I always tell people, you cannot unpop a drill, you cannot unpop a pill, you cannot unsmoke a joint, you cannot reverse. Once you put that pill inside of you, you have to let it run its course. And you don't know what will happen after you do. You cannot unpop a pill, you cannot unsmoke a joint. Once you keep that in mind, and know that, okay, I'm allergic to shrimp. How I knew that? Because I tried shrimp before when I was growing up, and I threw up every time I had shrimp. Nobody can make me eat shrimp again, because it's not good for me. Well, same thing. Don't put it in your system, okay, let me try this drink, and you spend whole night vomiting and sick. Listen, your education, folks, and you have your chance, you have your opportunity now to do something positive with your life and be that influence and that role model for others to follow.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. God Sinclair. I said it was our last. I have one provision I would like you to entertain. Dr. Brown has a question that she's begging to answer, and so we will surely take our AY leader's question.
Yes, Mr. Sinclair, thank you very much. I know you have to run. But I know that there are parents who, you know, their children, for some reason, might be on marijuana, either whether they're taking it to study or under stress, whatever it is. As a parent, what can I do if my child is currently, not my child, and this is hypothetical.
Yeah, we understand.
Is, you know, using marijuana, and the child, well, we know, as you said, it's legalized, you know, and they might
decriminalize.
Decriminalize, yes, decriminalize. That's the reality that a lot of parents face. What do you do as a parent? What's the first thing you do to help your child who doesn't seem to think that he or she is in trouble?
Okay, first of all, you don't ever say to your child, if I catch you using drugs, I could kill you. You don't ever say that to them, because they will hide and do it. So, maintain an open mind and have a discussion with them. Remember, there is nothing really you can do to stop you, because your child don't be with you 24/7. You can only have that discussion with your child and use people like me as an example of making the wrong choices. Because once the body get accustomed, for some people they go on to harder stuff because they could handle. So it starts with a little puff in a cigarette. They cough and realize they could try it again, and they try cigarette. And then it go on to marijuana, and then it could go on to cocaine or alcohol. There's nothing really you can do, ma'am, other than have that conversation with them. And if we can get Dr. Pottinger and Professor Hutchinson to answer that question tomorrow morning, please God, for those of you who would like to listen, we will ask them to answer that for you as well. Hear it from the experts, especially Professor Hutchinson. As you know, he's a renowned psychiatrist, and he will be joining us tomorrow on Independency to discuss this very topic. But you do not close your door. And as I said, don't ever tell your child, if I catch you using drugs, I'm going to kill you. Don't do that. Be that person that they can come and say, look, Mom, I tried marijuana last night and I don't like it, And have that conversation with them. Let them ask them how they felt. And so that if they become dependent on it, at least they will be brave enough to come and tell you. And as the lady behind you explained, that there are people now where you can take them for that help. If it has become unmanageable for them, you can actually take them now for counseling and as the lady explained, with the drug treatment courts and the workers that they have there to deal with this issue, right? But conversation, folks, is the thing. That's the important thing. Get your children to be comfortable discussing these things with you. And once they are afraid, they are going to hide it, and it's going to get worse. You don't want that.
I think we could give another round of applause for that answer, because this is a very important experience here today.
And folks, I really hope I was able to help you in any way and help you to understand, what's this all about. And as I leave you with, God is great all the time. Thank you very much once again.
So, Mr. Sinclair, we have Kianda here who would like to give a vote of thanks to you.
Mr. Sinclair, on behalf of the Caring University Church and the AY Committee, in extension, the university, we thank you for your time and the effort you've put in to teach us something and shared with us your experience. We appreciate it very much, and we'd like that your ministry extends and you touch more hearts, and that God carries you through this and He helps you to just share with everyone that you could and help more young people, because we know that the young people have been affected more. So we thank you once more, and we just have this little gift to give to you.
And I would just like to, Dr. Brown, lady behind you. No, I wanted to thank you too for reminding me about yes, okay. So about the drug treatment course and all of that. But in the information too is very important for you all to know. And I want to thank her for that. And once again, thank you folks. Thank you for the wonderful time. And I hope we can get to speak to a larger audience sometime in the future.
Thank you so much, sir. Really appreciate you. Yes.
Hi, everybody. So, thank you all for coming out this evening. So, everyone who has the paper from earlier, everybody know it was for cupcakes. Some of you all may come for it. So you could just stand to indicate who has the papers. But so the first 17. So if you have from 1 to 17, you will receive cupcakes. But before you receive it, you would have the closing prayer. So everyone stand so that we can pray to end. Okay, bow our heads and close our eyes. Dear Lord and Heavenly Father, I thank you for bringing us to the AY service this evening. I ask that you help us to take away a lot of information that was given today. Dear Father, I ask that you guide us as we leave to our various homes and to bless us. In Jesus' name, amen. So all those for the cupcakes, don't forget. And this evening there is the concert band performance for free. So come out, listen, and enjoy. Thank you. Generous donation, yes, that is true. First 17, so, and next 12. So first 17 and then 12. So 1 to 17 come, 18 to the next 12. You come collect.